Welcome back to Know Thy User, a marketing podcast brought to you by RivalMind, a results-driven digital marketing agency. I'm your host, Josiah Flex, and I'm very excited to introduce my guest today, my brother Isaac Flex. Isaac is the Director of Member Development at TMA, the Technology and Manufacturing Association. Isaac, thank you so much for joining.
Thanks for having me.
So first off, can you just tell us a little bit about TMA, your role, and then we'll kind of kick into all kinds of marketing conversations after that.
Absolutely. So TMA is an independent trade association established in 1925. We have a network of about 900 members, as we call them, but they're as both suppliers and manufacturers, and we help our members maintain and grow their businesses through industry-specific services. And those are more broadly kind of a one-stop shop covering almost every aspect of their business, community, connection, information, training, resources, advocacy. So as a small and mid-sized manufacturer, you pretty much have a solution to most challenges.
Dang. So what does your role look like in a little bit in that interaction with current members, prospective members, and whatnot?
Yeah, so my role is officially, it's more the sales side. Now, it's evolved over the last 5 years quite a bit. So I'm now 100% all new business, and so from that, I have the marketing arm kind of involved. But a lot of it is how do we communicate the message of TMA to a very busy business owner that has a lot of challenges, especially here in Illinois, and how do we effectively communicate how we can solve their problems and make their lives a little bit easier. So that's kind of my job. But at the end of the day, it's new business, it's new growth, because as the larger the organization, the more powerful we can, our benefits can be, the benefits that our members can gain.
Mm-hmm. So as a association, right, it's different than you guys, selling a product or whatnot. What would you say you're selling, or what would you say you're marketing?
Yeah, that's the best and the worst part about associations. And those that are in the industry know, especially for us, we're very broad when it comes to the services. So it's really looking at an entire company as to what sort of challenges do they need. So it's all service driven. So for instance, there was a national survey done at all trade associations, of all, reasons, shapes, and sizes. And everyone said when their results came back in was, well, why are you part of your organization? And you wouldn't guess the number one reason: connection. They want to know what other business owners and people like them are doing and feeling and experiencing, and they want to share best practices. They want to learn. That's why they're part of associations. So the most important thing I think that we do is connect our members together to either do business, to learn from each other, to be suppliers for one another many times, or referral sources. There's so many different avenues, but it's the magic of people, which is difficult because a product you can predict, people you always can't. However, the magic is when you get people in the room that are like, hey, I do this and you do this. Well, what if we did that together? And their businesses can explode both, because of the mutual benefit that they'll gain instead of trying to do it all themselves.
That's unique because I think even in, as we're talking about different marketing efforts, like the idea of people that do similar things instead of like fighting against each other, being like, hey, what are ways that we can actually be essentially fighting on the same team? Like, can you speak to that a little bit, of that reality of like, okay, as a association, you're bringing together a bunch of like-minded people, but I would have to imagine that there's some level of like two companies do the same thing. Like how do they share that?
That's a great question. Actually, I had a conversation earlier today with a supplier who has a lot of other similar companies. It was a bank. There's other banks that are involved, and they specifically were like, well, yes, we may have. I found that most businesses at first blush are, you think that they're competitors. So if you're a bank, you obviously are competing against other banks, but that's actually not true. Banks are actually working kind of almost in tandem with each other, as well as they all have their niche. Now, for manufacturing, I had a guest come to one of our brew hours, and we had another member that showed up, and they both were like, I do what you do. And I was like, well, this is kind of awkward, but here's the magic of it. They got talking, and they realized, they're like, no, actually, we should be referral sources to each other. And this prospective member was so stoked that they were able to go there, meet this company that they didn't know about. Now they have a source of new business. And he came back to me and said, look, that's exactly what I'm looking for in an association, is to get connected with people I wouldn't talk to. And when you peel back the onion a little bit, you find out most folks are not that directly competing with one another. There are some. There's definitely, I'll tell you that. There definitely are competitors out there, but most realize there's lots of fish in the sea. And so there's so much work to go around. And if you utilize the relationship well, you both can help each other and both improve your bottom line.
And that's a huge, I think that's a great distinction to make. Like, instead of thinking of everything as just everyone is against me or that like competitive nature, obviously there's still competitive nature, but you're making each other better as you spur on. Oh, you do this, I do this. How can I, get more clients to you that do the thing that you really are excellent at, and vice versa. That's really interesting. So we'll zoom back a little bit and then we'll zoom back in.
Sure.
Marketing as a whole, let's take a few minutes and kind of start to peel back the layers of what is marketing. Who are your marketers? Is it just your salespeople? Is it people that interact with your business at any time? Let's dive into that. What would be your first thought on what is marketing?
Yeah, that's such a broad word. I think marketing can mean so many different things to so many different people. The way that I view it, I think in simplest terms, is anytime you have a prospective customer looking at your business. So that could be online, that could be something that you're sending out to them, that could be one of your current customers. It's really anything that's leading up to the sale is marketing indirectly. And like SEO is marketing, because you're elevating that brand so that when prospective individuals are looking at your company, they see something that they like,
right?
Or that you're able to be found. So I'd say interesting for us as an association, we've grown organically for a very long time. We're also 100 years old. And the last couple of years, we've been really tapping into additional marketing avenues, and that have been very successful, that just haven't been tapped into as much. Most of it because it's such a people business. It's John who knows Sally who knows Jim making the introduction, like, hey, you should come to this event, or hey, I use one of their services and it transformed my business, or whatever it might be.
Right.
Those are the stories that get people involved, because it's, again, people, it's not a product.
Yeah. So there's a lot of different ways we can go in this conversation. So in regards to building trust, throughout a bunch of different conversations we've had on all the different podcasts, trust has kind of been like the bedrock of any marketing effort, right? All of us know the sleazy person who's trying to sell us something that we don't want anyways, or we don't trust them, versus somebody that is actually providing value. Can you speak to that idea of establishing trust, providing value as the bedrock for marketing?
Well, I think marketing needs to have the mindset of the receiver of the information, whatever it is. So I always just every day think about, all right, if I was not involved in this, I didn't have this role, it's not my job, would I be happy with this outreach, or with the way the brand looks, or with how we're presenting something? So I'm always viewing the lens through that view. And so when you're looking at it from that direction, you end up kind of always thinking about, well, will this make someone feel? It's all about feelings, because trust is a feeling. I guess you get trust by repetitive good feelings. Like someone that you're friends with, you have like someone 10 years, you like them because you've had repeated positive experiences with them over the long haul. So that indeed, when there is an ask, you've got that strong bridge between you and the other person. So I think marketing is building that good feeling, that good rapport, that goodwill. And it can be, that can mean a lot of things, but I think for me, it's goodwill into the market, into the people that potentially might have a problem that you can solve.
How do you rebuild trust, right? Like if trust is repetitive, good feelings, right? Not every company does it perfectly to where there's always good feelings every single time. So like what are some ways, right? Because in that conversation of marketing, trust is the bedrock. What if you start to lose some of that trust, or something? How do you regain that?
Well, that's more of like almost like a customer satisfaction, where you're talking about is this a customer or a prospective?
Either one.
Okay. If it's I think either way, you fall on your sword. So if you did something wrong, or they didn't like what you did, you immediately apologize and you validate their feelings about whatever it is, whether you agree with it or not. The customer or the potential customer is always right, because again, it's how they feel about it. I would say that's kind of the rule number one: fall on your sword. And what's crazy is it works, because then the customer says, all right, I didn't like what you did, but you're making it right. You're not blaming me. You're taking
Right.
responsibility. And that actually turns out to be a better thing. There was a study, and I don't remember all the specifics, but they surveyed like your longest best customers across businesses. Now it's a little broad, but one of the common threads was they found that your best customer typically is someone that you really fumbled the football on at one point or another. And what they found is that if you do everything perfect, there's nothing, it's like, it's not a relationship. Relationships have ups and downs. And I think in business as well, you have that. But if you're able to have a down moment and you make a mistake, but yet you can rebuild that, and again, fall on your sword, find out how you can make it right. If indeed you can save them and they don't totally leave and hate you, and they come back in, they'll be loyal for a very long time.
How do you figure out, or how do you measure a marketing effort, whether it's internal, keeping current clients, right, as like an internal marketing, right, like educating someone, and like an external marketing effort? What are some metrics that can be used to kind of measure that, right? We know trust is one of them, right? And that's something, is kind of an intangible, but you can kind of feel people will tell you when they don't like you or don't like what you did. Like, how do you measure different marketing efforts, right? Be it digital, be it email, be it like, how do you start to get some objective and subjective metrics together?
That is difficult. I wish I had a perfect answer for that.
I think every marketer out there is like, please give me the answer.
Yeah, if I had that, I would, yeah, that'd be amazing. I think you have to measure success within your company. So you got to know what is your company goals, and once you know that, then is it moving the needle towards that? So in the association world, it's a little simpler when it says you're looking to bring in new business and you're looking to keep that business, because it's an association, it's dues driven. So engagement and retention of those member companies is really important.
Right.
So we look at the retention numbers as, a retaining of the current customer. And then as far as outreach, I think we also look at it as, are we getting new members? And I know that's kind of broad, because it depends on the length of the sale. Now I'm talking more sales now. I've had customers where I will reach out with one cold email and land them the next week. They've never heard of me. They've never heard of TMA, and it rings all the bells for them, and they're just stoked and they join. Literally, that's happened many, many times. But I've also had plenty where I've been working on them over time for at least 3 years. And so, some might say, well, your efforts are not successful. It's like, well, it's almost, we're doing the same thing between two different things. There's that variable of awareness and timing. And that's on the sales side. We have to kind of read the room and ask, if you have a conversation, you've made contact with the customer. It's more on the sales side, less of the marketing. Yeah. You then have to ask the right questions and draw out where's their pain points and what's their timing looking like. Is this a pain point that they feel is like super duper urgent? Well, then let's help them make a decision.
That's right. It's go time.
Yeah. But
Call
if they're
into
like,
action, do the thing.
If they're like, hey, I got to talk to, up 7 layers up the flagpole in my business, well, that's going to take a while. But I still keep up with them, and we still have an effort that keeps our company, and I think every brand should have that while that process is going along, especially for the more complex sales. So as far as a definitive metric, it's so custom to your business and how you define success.
Yeah, knowing your business, knowing your audience, and knowing what marketing efforts actually work. And to some level, right, there's not like hard data all the time on this always works or this doesn't work. Specifically with TMA, how do you go about building like a champion for your business? Like whether it's someone who, had a challenging experience and you won them back, like how do you make someone an ambassador for your company, or a marketer, if you will?
Well, this is actually a program we have internally that evolved over time, because as we've done good work for our customers, they naturally talk about it to other people. And then they're like, hey, there's a random company we don't know that's now joining the association. And so we said, well, that's a big deal. We want to elevate the person that made the recommendation. And so what we have is an ambassador club that gives you perks, recognition, a special dinner, some kudos to know you're in the inner circle, because it means a lot when a current customer goes out of their way to go talk to one of their customers or friends or colleagues and tell them about it, that's a big deal. And we really elevate that. And over the years, we've built different levels you can go to. And we did a survey, which was very helpful. I think ambassador programs are not, or referral programs are not anything new, but you have to build it to your business. But one size fits all doesn't work. You can Google ambassador programs and they won't all work for every business. I just know it because I've done it and I've looked at other things. You have to know who's my customer and what motivates them. And what we did in our team, I was like, well, we should put out a survey to our current customers that have referred new business and say, why do you do that?
Surveys are always scary. How did you make that leap of like, you know what, we're going to ask for this. Who knows what they're going to say?
Yeah, it was a little scary because we had our own opinions of why they did what they did. And, not everyone participated per se, but we got, about 90% response for the group that we have, which is pretty high. But we gave a number of options for them. We made a multiple choice, but kind of drilled it into getting to the why behind what they're doing. And guess what? We found that your best ambassador does it for the right reasons, meaning they have intrinsic meaning and motivation to do it, not external forces to make them do it. Now, I think, from a nugget, it's not like someone's going to turn down a nice dinner or a kudos or a shout out or something like that. Of course, they'll all love it. But when you boil it down, they were like, even if that wasn't there, we believe in the product or the experience or, the service. And so we're going to talk about it no matter what. And when that came back, it was like, wow. So what we need to do is focus in on having a really good service and a really good experience, because that is the driver for why they're talking about it. And it circles back to, in marketing, you can't, if you have a crappy product, it's a crappy product. And I don't really care how much marketing you have. It will, yes, you work your numbers, but if you want to have organic growth, it has to be good. And it really has to make a difference in the lives of the customer. Otherwise, you're kind of just swimming doggy paddle and hoping to survive in the market. You really gotta be making, a home run or two pretty consistently with your customers.
Yeah, because it's people.
Yeah.
Right, like it's people that are, having experiences or buying a product and being like, oh, well, you said it was this and it wasn't. Or you said that, this was the service I was going to get, and either it exceeded it or it met it or it was below, right? And so the idea of like, okay, whatever you're selling, whether it's a product or a service, you're building a reputation somehow, whether it's for something that's really, really good and that's what you'll be known for, or the more people buy and the more people, actually move from the marketing effort into the sale, either they'll be your ambassador for forever or they'll be the ambassador of the ways that your company didn't provide in the right way.
Yeah, you're 100% right. Your customer, I think, is one of the more powerful tools you have as a marketer. And if your product is really good, people talk about it. If it's really bad, people talk about it even more. They say bad news travels faster than good news. That's true in business. So any failure or blunder will get more eyeballs and attention than a great win for your customer. So I think that even elevates the importance of really, really highlighting the wins and making sure that your customers know about it, that your community is aware of the good things that you're doing, so that that goodwill continues to build and grow. Because mistakes will happen and it's, impossible to avoid them. But if you focus on the wins and continually build that list of good rapport within your customer, whenever there are certain mistakes, it won't be detrimental and you won't lose customers or things of that nature.
Knowing your audience.
Yep. It unfortunately comes down to that. You get knowing who you're calling on, why you're calling on them, what challenges are they facing. And another piece to it is what I've realized from an email marketing standpoint. I used to think that emails themselves needed to be super fancy and like slick and look absolutely perfect. And I found that that's really not true at all. At least for the group that I call on, which are small and mid-sized manufacturing companies. These guys are extremely busy. They are producing product that goes out the door at a deadline that needs to be met. So most important, you know, you have raw materials coming in, it's being modified, machined, changed, assembled, and then out the door. That's their world. They live inside that box. So if you're going to get in that world, you have to be cut and dry and have instant value for them. They don't want fluff. They don't want a sales pitch. They want how, you know, can you really help me and prove it to me? And so
Like now.
yeah, like in this email, it should not take me a long time to read. It shouldn't be confusing. You should be talking my language as a manufacturer. And I found that the more and more our messaging was towards that end, the response rates, the replies, the open rates, boop, 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 just, I mean, it really was incredible to see. And I saw the ones that I thought were like, oh, that looks so nice. They didn't care about it.
Man, those are some solid nuggets you just tossed out there. Would you say at large, we're going to kind of get into TMA specifically for a second, but would you say most of your efforts are focused on, you know, gaining clients externally or retaining clients? Or I guess the question I'm kind of pecking at a little bit is, when does marketing stop? Does it stop? Where are the lines? Those sorts of things. Can you speak to that a little bit?
That's a great question. In my mind, we actually had a team call earlier in the year, and we were kind of renovating our onboarding process for our members, and we wanted to enhance that experience. And one of the pieces was, let's say I'm working with a customer or a member now, and they're, you know, a year and a half in. So I've been slowly working with them through various outreach, mostly calls and emails, and social, using LinkedIn and all that. And let's say that they join. The important part is to not stop doing what got them in. Whatever you did to get them engaged should be maintained, I think, through that next step as a customer. Now, you need to modify it and maybe a little bit more pretty and maybe a little more custom and may have more information than not, you know, because they got an exclusive experience now. But the pace and the cadence shouldn't go from like 1 to 100 or 100 to 1. Because I think that that's incongruent. It just doesn't make sense I think as a customer, I'd be a little annoyed or confused if I had this experience. I believe, you know, through the process of being sold and in the marketing, I'm like, okay, this is what I'm expecting. And if those don't align, their expectations are going to be off, either too low or too high. And then you just have an unsatisfied customer. So I think the folks that are the customer success managers are really important, because they need to make sure that all the efforts of the sales team and the marketing team doesn't go down the drain, because they need to keep that pace going, and I would say almost customize it to what the customer wants.
Yeah. So it sounds like, if I'm hearing you right, marketing doesn't end.
No.
It maybe changes forms, right, from, you know, before the sale to after the sale, but marketing is just you're keeping your business, what you do well, in front of someone, whether they're someone who's interested, whether they're a current client or not. Whoever's interested, like that's where the effort is. And I kind of baited you into that question a little bit, but it's an interesting concept to me, is that marketing doesn't end and shouldn't end, because it's about people, and you're actually caring about someone and providing value.
Yeah.
Like value is I know we're talking about all kinds of layers and bedrock of trust and value and knowing your audience. Like, all of those pieces are huge. What would you say has been either the most effective marketing tool for TMA so far? And well, let's start there, and then I'll ask a follow-up question. What do you think is the most effective marketing effort TMA has done?
Man, I would probably have a 1-2 kind of answer. I think first and foremost, social. We really amplified our social media activity, the quality of the postings, and I use a lot of LinkedIn. We of course post on like all the platforms, but for me, I'm really tracking LinkedIn, because that's where a lot of the business professionals are that we're calling on. And I can't tell you how many either potential customers will reach out to us through our inquiry form, and I'll be like, hey, you know, how'd you find out about us? And then many times it's, oh, I saw your post, or I saw. Well, a lot of times we empower our members to post about their experience, which is even better, and they'll tag us, and it's using that hey, we're posting about them and they're going to post about us, and so that elevates both of the brands and builds trust for other people to see and to hop onto that bandwagon. So I'd say social is really powerful, probably our best tool. And secondarily, as odd as it sounds, is cold emails and cold calls.
Still works.
Is
you
much,
do it right.
Some people say email is dead or cold calling is dead. I don't believe it. It must not be doing it right, because you gotta be very specific when you do that. You don't spam people. You research who you're calling on, why you're calling them, and why you're emailing them. And as long as it's within that framework, it should be ringing a bell for that customer. And they'll let you know, but many times if you put that thought into it, it's less of a, I'm gonna throw spaghetti on the wall and see what sticks. Be more narrow and focused, because it's not, I mean, cold calling and emailing is not that fun. And so you might as well be calling on people that potentially you think, based on your research and your team's research, are going to be potential customers.
What do you think is an up and coming marketing platform or avenue that either hasn't been explored yet or is being formed or whatnot, kind of as you look at what does or would marketing look like 5 years, 10 years, 15 down the road?
I mean, I think you're going to kind of have it's like a pendulum swinging situation. So we live in like a hyper digital world. Media, all that stuff, it's all digital. It's on the phones, it's, computers. But I think the paper and kind of old school stuff is probably, I sense that that's going to come back in, or at least it's going to have much more weight. Before it was the other way around. Everyone was doing paper mail and advertisements in the newspaper because people had physical stuff.
Right.
Now it's no one does that. So when you do some of the old school handwritten notes, that goes a long way. From a marketing standpoint as well as a customer retention standpoint, you're gonna. I mean, I don't know how often you get a handwritten note from your customers, or from a random company you don't know, but whenever you do that, it does kind of stand out, at least more than an email. I don't know. I'm not the expert, but I feel like some of the old school stuff is going to come back. Just like, our dad's old clothes are cool now, 30, 40 years later. Right? I think you're going to have some of that.
And who doesn't like opening up a note, like an actual letter that's like real, that's addressed to them or whatnot, right? Like, right, all of us, or most of us, grab most of our mail, sift through all the stuff that we're going to throw away, and look for the things that are cool and look for the things that are like, oh, this was written for me.
Yes.
That's interesting. So maybe paper's coming back, maybe mail's coming back. What would you say, how does someone identify what marketing effort is right for them, right? So we know, right, there's associations, there's people that sell products, that have just services. What are some ways, I know you can't give the like magic ticket for everybody, but what are some ways for a company to identify, hey, this is at least a marketing effort you should try if you haven't yet?
I think that's a great question. I would say you need to understand the team that you have. So scaling your marketing with the team that you currently have in-house and understanding folks, your team's strengths and weaknesses is a big deal. You can't do everything. You don't have, unless you're a really big company, you don't have the bandwidth or the budget to do every possible marketing channel. So I think to prioritize it, you have to, I would say you pick your top 3 and pay attention to those 3 things. Start doing 3, and it's about the consistency of it. Do 3 things really, really consistently, track it, and see how it's going. Don't try to do everything all at once, because it's like trying to send 20 trains out of the station. It's just like, you don't feel like you're making any progress. You're like, right. There's a lot of steam everywhere. It's just chaos. It's noisy. But if you have 3 trains that are going out the station, it's more manageable. You can track where it is. Is it working? Is it not? And then modify as you go. Of course, I think having your social and your podcasts and all of that, you got to be doing those things, and just doing the basic blocking and tackling of cold email, cold calls, and then sprinkling in, of course, all of the other digital tools like SEO is super powerful, making sure that your digital presence is visible and interesting to look at because everyone is looking at that.
Right. And I think that that leads into another question of, okay, so you have to not only try a certain effort, but you have to have some way of measuring that effort, right? And there's a timeline of that, right? How long do you try? Do you try it for 3 months? You try it for 6 months? You try it for a year and then assess? Or because there's some strategies, some marketing efforts that are short-term strategies where you're like, okay, you're doing pay-per-click. Like, you can't let that run. It's going to just blow your budget, right? You have to pay attention to that at a far more frequent rate. Whereas, a email campaign or something like that. Can you speak to a little bit of how do you measure a marketing effort, and how do you set like an expectation for timeline of how long should you be in this before you can figure out, oh yeah, this is worth it or this isn't worth it? What are some thoughts you would have on that piece?
Well, I guess if I'm speaking to a small business or a medium-sized business that is looking to grow their marketing efforts, I'm not talking about a big, huge Fortune, 100 company. They've got all that built in. They have that all internally.
Yeah.
But for a smaller company, most of America's small businesses, I would say you need to figure out best practices. Don't go and try and reinvent that wheel and try to literally do everything from scratch. I think a lot of small businesses do that because they're like, well, I don't know, so I got to go figure it out. I think you do need to figure it out, but you really would be remiss to not reach out to other networks, other companies, other specialized services, and get their insight and figure out what benchmarks you can go off of, so that, for instance, you could willy-nilly say, hey, we need 6 months for this marketing campaign to be effective. But if the industry says it's a 12-monther, you better adjust that, or at least get closer. Maybe it's gonna be 9 months, something to where you have a buffer, a window, so that you're not severely disappointed or your expectations aren't way off. So, as far as the specifics of which channel is going to be best for you, I would say you need to have a network to go to, a resource, a community to reach out to, find a trusted digital agency that can work together if you want to work with them, and figure out what can you do in-house and what can you outsource. I'd say that's probably more broad. I don't want to go over my skis and try to give real specifics into how long should it be, because there's so many variables for your product, your outreach, the consistency, all of that, the numbers. But I would say those overarching themes, ensuring that you have other resources speaking into your marketing project, not just your small team doing all of that lift. Because unless someone is an expert in it, your whole team are experts, you're going to have a lot of fumbling around in the dark, where that could be avoided with getting some other outside opinions.
Man.
To at least give you a guide. You got to have a guide, and then it's off to the races.
Right. Expectations have to be set somehow. And if you don't know the timeline of how long an effort should take, then you can't measure success adequately, or figure out whether this is something, because last thing you'd want to do is bail too soon on something.
Right.
Or have an inaccurate expectation, and then you try something and you're like, man, why isn't this happening fast enough, or this is happening too slow, or any of those things. So man, that's huge. Well, unfortunately, we are out of time for right now. Isaac, gosh, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you everyone for listening and for watching. I'm your host, Josiah Flex. Join us next week on Know Thy User for another marketing conversation.